A Korean crime king was seconds away from signing a deal that would end a blood war across 3 countries, until a tired black cleaner pushed open the wrong VIP bathroom door and walked straight into his execution room. And what he did with her life next overturned everything he thought he controlled. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, have you ever taken a wrong turn that changed your life? Where are you watching from? Stay with this story until the end, because the choice she makes when she discovers the truth about her husband divides everyone who hears it. Before we start, tell me in the comments, have you ever taken a wrong turn that changed your life? And where are you watching from right now? Here's what happened. Melissa Okoye was racing her mop bucket down the silent VIP corridor of a Minneapolis luxury hotel when her phone buzzed with a hospital bill alert. Distracted, panicked, she shoved the nearest unlabeled door and stepped into a room of armed men, a bleeding body on the floor, and a tall stranger pointing a gun not at the victim, but at her. He didn't ask her name. He didn't tell her to leave. He said one word that froze the guards. Take her. And that was the moment Melissa's normal life ended. The scream never left her throat. 1 second, Melissa was sprinting through the marble corridor, mop bucket rattling, badge slipping from her pocket. And the next, she was staring down the barrels of 3 guns. The world went silent, except for the slow drip of blood from a man's hand onto the white floor. It didn't make sense. The penthouse suite was supposed to be empty. No guests, no noise, just her and her exhaustion. But the door she'd pushed open wasn't a restroom at all. It was a private meeting room, sharp with cigar smoke and fear. Men in black suits pivoted toward her, weapons raised. The tallest among them had a bullet wound blooming dark through his ribs. Even bleeding, his posture was unshaken, like the injury annoyed him more than it hurt. Kim Jun-se. Though she didn't know his name yet, instinct screamed danger. Melissa's cleaning cart toppled, bottles of disinfectant crashing against marble. The metallic click of safeties unlocking filled the air. She stumbled backward, palms raised, eyes wide, until the man in the center spoke. Stop. Just one word, low and calm. The command rippled through the room like thunder. Everyone froze. Jun-se's gaze cut across her, sharp, unreadable, terrifyingly steady. He looked at her the way a wolf studies something it doesn't plan to eat unless necessary. A body lay at his feet. Another man, lifeless, eyes open toward the chandelier. The smell of gunpowder hung thick. Melissa's heart slammed against her ribs. I didn't see anything, she whispered. A lie. She had seen too much. Jun-se turned to one of his men, Min Jae-hyuk, whose expression was almost kind, almost cruel. Clean this up, Jun-se murmured, and take her upstairs. Her breath hitched. Please. Alive, he added quietly. Min's faint smile chilled her more than the guns did. Of course, boss. Rough hands seized her arms. The hallway blurred as they dragged her away. Behind her, she heard the muted sound of something heavy being covered. A body, a secret, a choice she couldn't unsee. When the elevator doors closed, Min leaned in, voice soft enough to curdle her blood. You really shouldn't have opened that door. The last thing she saw before blacking out was his smile. When Melissa woke, it wasn't in a police station. It was in a penthouse suite, wrapped in silk sheets that didn't belong to her, with her wrists bound by velvet ribbon. The city glittered beyond the window. Minneapolis at midnight. The skyline looked peaceful, which felt like a cruel joke. She sat up fast, throat dry. The door opened. 2 men in tailored suits entered. One carried a folder thick with papers. The other, a woman with an expression like polished steel, set down a tray of tea she didn't dare touch. Then he walked in. Kim Jun-se. Cleaned up now, though the faint shadow of a bandage peeked beneath his shirt. His presence filled the room before he spoke. "You were in the wrong place," he said. "At the wrong time." I didn't mean to." "I know." His tone was almost gentle. Almost. "But meaning doesn't matter. You saw what you shouldn't have." He sat across from her, unhurried, and slid the folder toward her. Inside were documents stamped with government seals and red ink. Her name, her signature line. "What is this?" "Protection," Min's voice drawled from the corner. He was smiling again, eyes glittering like amusement was a secret weapon. "Or prison. Depends how you look at it." Jun-se leaned forward. "If you sign, you live under our protection. If you refuse..." He paused, letting the silence stretch until her pulse became unbearable. "You will be charged under fabricated terror acts. You'll disappear, and no one will ask where you went." Her chest tightened. "You can't..." "Try me," Min murmured. Jun-se's gaze softened, though his words remained cold. "You have my word that you'll be treated well, housed, fed, safe. But you must agree to one thing." He slid a second document across the table. This one made her blood run cold. A marriage certificate. Her name beside his. Melissa stared at the paper, vision swimming. "This is insane." "It's necessity," he said simply. "A public marriage protects you and me. No one can touch what belongs to the Blood King." Tears blurred her vision. "You're asking me to ruin my life. I'm offering you a way to keep it." Her fingers trembled as she gripped the pen. The room felt too small, too bright, too suffocating. The officials standing behind her were silent witnesses to something she didn't understand. Somewhere outside, snow began to fall against the glass. Melissa Okoye signed her name, and the moment the ink dried, her life as she knew it vanished. Far below, Min watched with quiet satisfaction and whispered to himself, "Welcome to the family." The flight to Seoul was silent. Melissa sat between two armed men who didn't speak a word, their presence heavy as stone. She stared out the window as city lights vanished beneath clouds, her reflection pale and foreign. Somewhere between one time zone and another, she stopped feeling real. By the time they landed, dawn was breaking over Korea, a pale wash of gold across endless forests and mist. The convoy that awaited them outside the airport was sleek and black, engines purring like predators. They drove her through winding roads until civilization gave way to wilderness. Then she saw it, an estate carved into the mountainside, more fortress than mansion. Gates of black steel, walls veined with security sensors, and guards that didn't look humanly capable of blinking. The sign over the arched gate read, "The Black Garden." It was beautiful in a haunting way, like a paradise grown from war. Inside, every surface gleamed. Marble, glass, iron, blood-red carpets. But the first thing Melissa noticed wasn't luxury. It was the silence, the kind that presses down, whispering, "Behave or disappear." They handed her over to a line of attendants dressed in muted uniforms. One bowed. "Madam Kim," she said softly, as if the title burned her tongue. Melissa followed in numb obedience until the sound stopped her cold. A gunshot. It came from the courtyard. She turned just in time to see it happen. A man kneeling before Jun-se, trembling, begging. Another word in Korean, then another shot. The man collapsed. Jun-se didn't flinch. He handed the pistol to a guard, wiped the back of his neck with a white cloth, and looked up toward the balcony where Melissa stood. Their eyes met, hers wide with horror, his unreadable. Dinner that evening was a cruel performance of calm. Crystal glasses, white wine, porcelain plates. Junsei sat across from her, sleeves rolled, voice soft. "You shouldn't have seen that." Her fork clattered against the plate. "You think I can just erase it?" He met her gaze evenly. "I think you can learn to survive it." Melissa laughed, shaky and bitter. "Survive? You mean pretend I'm not a hostage in your castle?" "If I wanted a hostage," he said, sipping his wine, "you'd be locked in the basement. You're here because you are useful alive." He said it without malice, just truth, which somehow made it worse. Later, when she was alone in her suite, she stared out at the moonlit gardens. Roses grew in symmetrical lines, perfect and suffocating. Beauty built on control. She realized then that in this place freedom didn't come from running. It came from understanding the rules and breaking them quietly. By dawn, Melissa Okoye decided she wouldn't be a silent bride. If she was trapped in the Blood King's garden, she would find out where the roots bled. Melissa learned fast which hallways were watched, which guards were lazy, which servants whispered near the kitchens when they thought no one was listening. Junsei had given her a tablet to acclimate herself. News access, educational apps, digital etiquette guides. What he didn't realize was that it also connected her to internal estate files. Limited access, yes, but enough for her to start collecting fragments. Night after night, she built a quiet archive, transaction records, coded messages, encrypted ledgers. It wasn't about rebellion. It was survival. Knowledge was the only weapon she could wield without blood. Then, one evening, while passing the East Corridor, she saw something that stopped her breath. Min Jae-hyuk, laughing softly with another guard. The movement of his wrist caught her attention, a flash of ink beneath his cuff, a tattoo, a flower emblem, the same one she'd glimpsed that first night in Minneapolis, stamped on the bloodied documents she wasn't supposed to see. Her pulse spiked. She turned away quickly, but the realization sank like ice. Min wasn't just dangerous. He was connected. Later, Junsei found her in the library, standing too still among shelves of unread books. "You're trembling," he said quietly. "I'm cold," she lied. He tilted his head. "You've been avoiding me." Melissa forced a tight smile. "Maybe I just don't enjoy dining next to men who execute people in courtyards." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes flickered. Regret? Weariness? She couldn't tell. "I didn't choose this life," he murmured. "I inherited it, and now you've inherited me." The vulnerability in his tone broke something in her. For a moment, the monster vanished, leaving only a man with too much blood on his hands. "Then why not end it?" she whispered. "Walk away." "Because if I do," he said softly, "the men who come next will burn this country to the ground." The silence that followed was heavy, intimate, dangerous. Junsei took a step closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. "If you hate me honestly. But don't lie to yourself about what's happening between us." Her breath hitched. "There's nothing between us." His eyes darkened. "Then why are you shaking?" She turned away, furious at herself for caring, for feeling anything but fear. "You can control my life, but you don't get my heart." "I don't want your heart," he said, voice low. "I just don't want your death." That night, she hid her digital recordings in an encrypted drive and locked it beneath the floor vent. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Outside her window, thunder rolled across the hills. Somewhere else in the house, Min poured himself a drink and made a quiet call. "Everything's ready," he said into the phone. "Activate the ambush." The night of the ceremony felt like a coronation and a funeral, Hundreds of syndicate representatives flooded the Black Garden's ballroom, the air sharp with perfume and power. Cameras weren't allowed, but Melissa could feel every stare like a blade. The Blood King's foreign wife, a curiosity dressed in silver silk. Min Jae-hyuk stood beside Jun-se, smiling as if the kingdom already belonged to him. Melissa had been instructed to remain silent, smile when cued, bow when introduced. She obeyed until she noticed something strange. Whispers moving faster than champagne trays. Conversations dying mid-sentence as eyes darted toward her. Then Min tapped his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth as honey over poison. "Our beloved boss has always valued loyalty. But tonight," he turned toward Melissa, "we must question whether loyalty has been returned." The room froze. Melissa blinked. "What?" Min held up a tablet. Files glowed across the screen. Her recordings, her secret archives. "My team discovered something troubling," he said. "Sensitive data extracted from syndicate servers by none other than our boss's wife." Her stomach dropped. "That's not true." "Show them," Min commanded. Images flashed on the main projection wall. Melissa accessing encrypted files, timestamps, even her hidden drive. It was all there, twisted to look deliberate. Jun-se's face hardened. He didn't speak, didn't move. Melissa's voice broke. "You know I wouldn't. Someone framed me." The murmurs swelled, sharp and cruel. "Spy. Traitor. American plant." Min continued, feigning sorrow. "She was sent to infiltrate us, gather intelligence, and sabotage the Blood King from within." We all saw the timing. She arrived after the assassination attempt. Coincidence? "No!" Melissa's scream cracked in her throat. "I was cleaning. I didn't even know who he was." But no one listened. Not even him. Jun-se's hand clenched around his glass, shattering it silently. Blood dripped from his palm, but his eyes, God, his eyes were unreadable, torn between fury and disbelief. "Enough," he said at last. His voice didn't rise, but the crowd went still. "Escort her out." Melissa stumbled forward. "Jun-se, please, look at me. You know me." His silence was the answer. Guards seized her arms. Min gave a shallow bow, smirking. "Don't worry, boss. I'll handle the interrogation personally." Her heart slammed. "No!" The ballroom doors closed behind her. The last thing she saw was Jun-se, standing beneath the chandelier, looking like a king made of stone. When the convoy left the Black Garden that night, the sky split open with rain, and Melissa Okoye, wife, witness, scapegoat, vanished into the storm. If this part of the story hit you, tap the like so YouTube knows stories like this deserve to be shared. It really helps this channel. Jun-se didn't sleep for 3 days. The Black Garden reeked of smoke and betrayal. Min's men had taken over the lower wings under the guise of security. The press whispered about treason inside the Blood King's court, while syndicate allies demanded proof of loyalty. He gave them none. He didn't have any left to give. Jun-se spent nights pacing his office, Melissa's files spread across the desk. Her face flashed through every memory, the trembling defiance, the impossible warmth in her voice when she'd said walk away. He wanted to hate her. God, he tried, but doubt bled through everything Min touched. On the 4th night, a shadow moved outside his door. His head snapped up. "Come in." It was Dr. Park, the estate medic. Her hands shook as she set down a small drive. "You didn't get this from me," she whispered. "Min's men intercepted the wrong server. These are the original files." Jun-se plugged it in. His pulse thundered. The footage was untouched. Melissa, scrolling through records labeled Restricted Financial Movements, Min J.H. She hadn't stolen syndicate data. She'd been investigating him. Min-ee. The truth detonated in Junsei's chest. His chair scraped violently against the marble. He played the rest of the footage, uncovered bank transfers, offshore accounts, coded shipments linking Min to rival families. All of it proof that the man he'd trusted most had been feeding the war from both sides, and he'd let Min destroy the one person who'd tried to save him. When dawn broke, Junsei was still sitting there. Bloodshot eyes, gun on the table, his reflection fractured across the glass wall. The knock came hours later. Min stepped inside, smiling faintly, as if sensing his own downfall. "Rough few days?" he asked. Junsei rose slowly. "You framed her." Min tilted his head. "She framed herself. Curiosity is a dangerous habit." The silence between them stretched, electric and final. "You killed my father's legacy," Junsei said quietly. "Now you've taken the only thing that made me want to change it." Min's smile sharpened. "You're too emotional to lead." "Always were." The bullet hit the wall an inch from his ear. "You'll pay for what you've done," Junsei said. "I already have," Min whispered. "You just don't know how much yet." By the next morning, Junsei's war room lit up with coordinates. Sicily, the fortress of the rival syndicate that had taken custody of Melissa after her supposed betrayal. Every source confirmed the same thing. Min's men had handed her over. Junsei didn't hesitate. He gathered his remaining loyalists, those who still owed his father blood debts, and outlined the mission. "We go to Sicily," he said. "We end this." One of his men asked, "And if we don't come back?" Junsei's gaze was steady. "Then at least we die doing something clean." As engines roared to life and jets taxied across the private airfield, he stood alone for a moment, wind cutting through his coat, the first light of dawn bleeding red across the horizon. Melissa's voice haunted him like a promise he didn't deserve. "You can control my life, but you don't get my heart." He closed his eyes and whispered to the ghosts he carried, "Then I'll bring her heart back anyway." The rescue craft launched into the dawn, slicing toward the Mediterranean, and behind them, the black garden burned. The fortress looked like it had been carved from the bones of the earth. Stone walls rose above the Sicilian cliffs, their shadows swallowing the sea below. Floodlights swept the perimeter, cutting through smoke from nearby fires. Inside, Melissa counted the seconds by the drip of leaking pipes. She'd lost track of how long she'd been there. Days, weeks. Her wrists were raw from chains, her throat scorched from silence. The cell smelled of salt, metal, and fear. Sometimes she still dreamed of the black garden, of the night she'd signed her name away. But now even those dreams were fading into ash. Footsteps echoed. A guard opened the door and tossed in a cup of water. She lunged for it before remembering that even kindness here was a weapon. Above ground, chaos was blooming. Junsei's assault team had landed under fog cover. Black-clad men ghosted across the cliffs, knives silent, guns unholstered. He led them himself, face masked, eyes unflinching. The air reeked of gunpowder and vengeance. "Cut the lights," he ordered. The fortress plunged into darkness. Muffled shouts followed. The first explosion ripped through the south wall, showering stone and fire into the sky. Melissa jolted at the sound, hope and terror colliding in her chest. She pressed against the bars, heart hammering. Another blast. Screams. Footsteps racing closer. When the door burst open, she flinched, raising her chained hands, until she saw him. "Junsei." Her voice broke on his name. He didn't speak. He just crossed the room, eyes dark and frantic, and crushed her against him. For one suspended second, the world stilled. The blood, the smoke, the noise, all falling away. "Can you walk?" She nodded, trembling. "Stay behind me." They moved through the corridors, gunfire sparking off the walls. Every corner hid an enemy. Every breath was borrowed. Junsei's men were dying one by one to carve their path to freedom. Then a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Leaving so soon?" Min Jae-hyuk stepped from the shadows, sword gleaming in his hand. His suit was immaculate, his smile almost gentle. "You always had terrible timing, Hyung." Junsei shoved Melissa behind a pillar. "Run!" "No," she whispered. The two men circled each other, brothers by blood oath, now divided by betrayal. "You took everything from me," Junsei said, voice low. Min's grin widened. "No, I took what you never deserved to have. Power, love, loyalty, all wasted on you." Their blades collided, metal sparking in the dark. The sound was intimate, terrible, two hearts breaking with every strike. Melissa tried to move closer, but gunfire pinned her down. She watched through tears as Min's sword sliced across Junsei's shoulder, blood blooming bright. Still, Junsei didn't falter. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose. When Min disarmed him, it felt like the end, until Junsei drove the broken hilt of his blade into Min's chest. Both men froze. Min gasped, shock flickering in his eyes. "She was bait," he choked. "From the start. I wanted you to love her, so you'd suffer when she died." Junsei's face went pale. "You." "She was never the threat," Min whispered, blood trailing from his mouth. "But your heart was." The blade twisted, and the sound of it silenced everything else. When Min collapsed, the fortress shuddered under another explosion. Flames rolled across the walls, eating through stone. Melissa reached him just as the ceiling began to cave. "We have to go." He didn't answer, just pulled her close, dragging them both through smoke and ruin. By the time they reached the cliffside exit, the fortress was burning to the ground, and the night smelled of salt and gunpowder. He looked down at her, face streaked with soot and blood. "It's over," he said, but his eyes said otherwise, because they both knew nothing ever ended clean. By dawn, Sicily was ash. Interpol drones circled the wreckage, recording everything: the burning fortress, the dead guards, the international chaos left in the Blood King's wake. Melissa sat in the back of the extraction truck, wrapped in a thermal blanket, hands still trembling. Her mind couldn't reconcile the man beside her, the ruthless king and the broken boy bleeding through his clothes. He didn't speak, not as medics stitched his arm, not as they loaded the wounded, not even when she whispered, "You saved me." He just looked out the window, eyes haunted. "I destroyed everything." "Min destroyed everything," she said softly. "No." He turned to her, voice raw. "I did. I believed him. I let him turn me into what he wanted me to be." The convoy sped through mountain roads, sirens in the distance. The radio crackled with panic. Interpol warrants, international sanctions, criminal alliances crumbling. The Blood King's empire was collapsing in real time. Melissa reached for his hand. "You can still fix it." He flinched. "There's no fixing blood." But later, when the truck split to evade authorities, he pulled her aside near a deserted airstrip, just as dawn cracked over the horizon. The world was quiet, only the ocean wind and the hum of a waiting jet. He faced her then, the last pieces of his empire burning in his eyes. "I'm not going back to Seoul," he said. "Interpol will track me anywhere I stay. Every man left loyal to me will die for it." She swallowed. "So what now?" "You go home." The words hit harder than the war. "What?" "You'll have a new identity. Money. Papers. Enough to build whatever life you want." His voice was steady, but his fingers trembled as he brushed her hair back. "No debts, Melissa. No chains." Her throat closed. "You think I can just walk away after everything?" "I'm giving you what I promised," he said. "Freedom." She stepped closer, tears hot against the cold wind. "And what about you?" He smiled faintly. Sad, tired, unguarded. "I'm the king without a kingdom. My sentence is survival." "Then let me stay." "Stay," he said quietly, "and you'll never stop running. Every camera, every shadow, it'll follow you until there's nothing left." Melissa's breath shook. "I don't care." He caught her face between his palms, gentle despite the blood on them. "I care." For the first time since that night in the hotel, he kissed her. Slow, broken, honest. It wasn't passion. It was grief, disguised as love. When he pulled away, his voice was a whisper. "If the world was different, maybe we could have been too." She touched his cheek. "Maybe we still are." He stepped back, retreating toward the waiting jet. "Tell your mother you made it home." Chun say, "Don't look for me," he said, and turned away before she could see him break. The engines roared to life. Wind tore through her hair as the plane taxied down the strip. Then, over the rising noise, she heard his voice, faint but clear, through her tears. "Live, Melissa. That's all I ever wanted." The plane lifted into the horizon, a black silhouette fading into morning light. Behind it, Interpol vehicles sped across the cliffs, sirens blaring. The world had a new enemy now, the Blood King gone rogue. Melissa stood there until the sky went quiet. Then she whispered the only prayer she knew. "Please, let him make it out alive." The sun rose over the sea, washing her in light. Somewhere far above the clouds, the man she'd married disappeared into exile, and the girl who'd walked into the wrong door became the woman who had survived loving him. The tarmac shimmered in the late summer heat, wind tugging at Melissa's hair as the private jet idled nearby. She'd thought she'd never see him again. But 3 months later, after the chaos, after hiding under an assumed name and watching the world condemn him, a message arrived. 3 words, written in clean English, on hospital stationery, delivered by an anonymous courier. One last goodbye. Now, she stood on a secluded Korean airstrip at sunset, the sky painted in gold, and smoke. Junsei stepped out of the shadows. He looked thinner, older, dressed in black that blended with the dusk. The scars on his face had faded into pale reminders, but the weight in his eyes hadn't. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "You shouldn't have written," she countered softly. He exhaled a rough laugh. "Fair." Silence stretched between them. "Familiar?" "Loaded." She broke it first. "Interpol's still after you." "I know. Then why risk this?" He looked past her toward the horizon. "Because running isn't living. And I owed you something I never gave. Truth." Her heart clenched. "I'm not a man who deserves forgiveness," he said. "But I need you to know. Every choice I made, even the wrong ones, were meant to protect you." Melissa shook her head. "You don't get to decide what protects me. You took my choice away the night you made me your wife." "I know." His voice cracked slightly. "And I've hated myself for it every day since." The wind carried the scent of jet fuel, sharp and cold. He stepped closer, holding out a small silver ring, the same one from their wedding. "You're free. But if you ever want to come back, not to this world, but to me, I'll wait until I can meet you as a man, not a king." Tears burned her eyes. "You won't have to wait forever." He smiled faintly, then looked away, as if memorizing her before letting go. "Go build your life, Melissa, the one I took from you." She slipped the ring into her pocket and stepped back. "I will, but I won't divorce you." His eyes widened slightly. "I just can't pretend it didn't happen." When she turned to leave, her voice broke one last time. "Goodbye, Yunsei." He didn't call after her. He just watched her walk away, into light, into freedom, until she vanished. Seoul, 1 year later. The Black Garden was gone. The Blood King was a ghost whispered about in headlines, never captured, never confirmed dead. And Melissa Okoye was alive. Her name now appeared on a nursing school roster at a quiet university. She lived in a small apartment above a flower shop, her mother's laughter echoing from the kitchen as she healed, the sickness finally in remission. Life was quiet, honest, but sometimes at night, when she walked home from the clinic, Melissa caught herself glancing at the shadows between buildings, expecting to see him there, smirking, waiting, dangerous and tender all at once. He never appeared, not until the first snowfall. That evening, she found a small black box in her doorstep. No note, no name. Inside lay a single silver ring, worn, scratched, unmistakable. Beneath it, a pressed white rose. Her heart clenched so tight it hurt. She stood there for a long time, snow dusting her hair, city lights shimmering across wet pavement. Then she smiled, soft and sad, and whispered, "You kept your promise." Melissa turned, the ring over in her palm before slipping it onto a chain around her neck. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't even peace, but it was hers. And somewhere out there, she knew he was still fighting his way back, not to power, not to a throne, but to the sliver of redemption that love had carved into him. Her voice carried into the winter air, barely louder than a breath. I walked into the wrong VIP bathroom, and out of the bloodiest love story I never wanted. The snow kept falling, erasing footprints, softening the edges of the world. But nothing could erase what they'd survived, or the kind of love that changed even monsters. So tell me, if you were Melissa, would you walk away to protect your freedom? Or stay with the man you love, even knowing the danger? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one.